How great is this chapter in your life?
The top of the top.
It is.
Yeah, well, I love my wife. She's incredible.
When you're older, do you ever find yourself questioning the nature of true love? Hollywood actor Richard Gere recently opened out on his journey to true love at the age of 75. It's not about happy endings or fairy tales, but about learning and developing and finding a friend who sticks by your side. Come explore with me his incredible story of overcoming adversity to find true love. When most people hear the name Richard Gere, images of the charismatic actor from films like American Gigolo and Pretty Woman probably pop into their heads. Even though Richard grew up in a world of red carpets and cameras, that wasn't always the case. Prominence and wealth are not the only factors. A young guy seeks authenticity in a society that recognizes only his image. Before he became famous and moved to Hollywood, Gere was a tiny Pennsylvania lad. He was a trumpet player in school bands and a philosophy major. In addition to attempting to address life's larger issues, he composed music for plays. Despite his optimism, he was nervous. He pushed himself into acting and theater after dropping out of college in an effort to escape his real life and become someone else. Changing his identity every night allowed him to disguise his true self. He was striking in Hollywood due to his self-confidence and attractive looks. The ladies noticed him. Because of his attractiveness and air of mystery, he attracted many admirers. Still, something crucial was absent. Relationships with editors, models, and performers were enjoyable in his early years, but they were short-lived. These brief yet intense feelings of love were fleeting. When it came to maintaining love, Gere was clueless. A new relationship had left him confused about what it meant to love. The stunning ladies he met as a result of his fame and fortune did not teach him the art of genuine connection-making. The focus on him gave the impression that he wasn't as lonely as he actually was. It seems strange that someone with such a positive exterior should be so unhappy on the inside. However, it is precisely what transpired. He appeared to be smiling and charming everyone on video, but when they were not looking, he had different thoughts. Since Gere lacked the physical strength to hold them near, the ladies came and departed. With all the parties and movie sets filling his life, there wasn't much room for genuine love to blossom. In real life and on screen, Gere was perpetually mired in supporting roles. The charming bachelor, the Hollywood heartthrob, and the elusive star were all descriptors that failed to do justice to his true character. In the shadows, he continued to seek an unnamed love that did not demand him to pretend or lie. This struggle became very evident in his encounters with some truly remarkable ladies. As a young man, he was portrayed by the feisty and courageous Carol Mallerie as a jewel shooting across the sky. The photograph was stunning, but it made one reflect on the transience of his love. Another lady in his life was Dawn Steele, who went on to become the first woman to head a major film company. His partner from Days of Heaven, Penelope Milford, remained at his side throughout the most of the 1970s, providing him with a sense of stability. With the help of Sylvia Martin, he went on a meditative pilgrimage to Nepal and learnt about Buddhism and meditation. Lovely, courageous, and very intelligent, these ladies were all. But love was but a fleeting phase in Gere's life. His career was soaring from American Gigolo to looking for Mr. Goodbar. But he was slipping into a position where he hadn't learned to keep a woman's heart. Everything from the camera lights to the parties to the lonely hotel nights contributed to the man's image of an empty shell. He was desiring love. That much was clear. It was because he was still unsure of how to ensure its longevity. Because he wasn't secure or connected enough, he couldn't trust anyone completely. He never got a chance to settle down, since he was constantly seeking out new and interesting experiences. The turning point came in 1988 during a BBQ in Beverly Hills. The woman was 22 years old, while the male was 39. She had only just begun her meteoric rise to fame as a top fashion model. Something thrilling happened the second they met, despite the fact that their lives couldn't have been more different. Their love blossomed rapidly and profoundly. Gere had gone from being a renowned Hollywood actor to being one half of a famous power couple that everyone wanted to know more about. They were a media darling, red carpet sensation, and magazine cover girls while they were roommates in New York. They were considered the perfect match in the 90s. Despite the splendor, something seemed amiss. Cindy still had no idea who or what she was. Because everyone wanted to make her famous, she matured fast. Richard was the focus of everyone's attention for 20 years. He sought solace in meditation and selfless service because he was sick of it all. They each followed various paths in life. While Richard found peace and quiet, Cindy was always on the go and welcoming new people. They tied the knot in a short ceremony in Las Vegas with just immediate family and close friends in attendance. Although they wore rings crafted from silver foil, the gap between them continued to widen. While Richard remained still, Cindy was occupied with various events and picture sessions. In her pursuit of being the woman he desired, she became someone she wasn't. Their gradual separation was devoid of drama or rumors. They had discreetly broken up by 1995, just two individuals who couldn't get along. No animosity or fighting involved. Richard Gere finally spoke up after nearly 30 years. He loved a lady who was still discovering her identity. It was asking too much, but he thought love might make her feel secure. Everyone was correct. They were simply not destined to be together at that moment in time. After the dazzling lights went out, what transpired? What did Richard Gere do to discover a love that was genuine and unforced? In the years that followed, when things were less hectic, we traveled from the limelight to seclusion, from anxious exploration to contented comprehension, and that's where we found the solution. In the late 80s, when Richard Gere and Cindy Crawford were dating, the public seemed to be seeing the correct tale conveyed. She was a young, stunning beauty on the rise to stardom in the fashion industry, and he was a handsome, charismatic Hollywood actor. They appeared unstoppable when they were in one other's company. The news reporters were completely smitten with them. Everywhere they went, cameras were following. They graced several red carpets together, as well as magazine covers and glossy posters. They were the most influential couple of the 90s. The fairy tale was well received and enjoyed by everybody. In spite of the public adoration they received, their personal lives were drastically different. Even now, Cindy hadn't fully embraced her identity. Her hectic work schedule and the pressure to present a specific image were preventing her from unwinding. She was constantly on the go, rushing from photo sessions to fashion shows in an effort to live up to everyone's expectations of her. Where does Richard stand? For much longer, he had been mentioned in the press. 20 years of being the Hollywood dream guy had worn him down. He yearned for an escape from the clamor of celebrity and for some peaceful time alone. In order to focus on his meditation and the things that truly mattered to him, he was increasingly escaping the bright lights. It seemed like their lives were on separate paths. Cindy lived in a world that was vibrant with activity and excitement, while Richard yearned for tranquility. Things were getting more complicated for them. Their intimate, private wedding took place in Las Vegas in 1991. Both the guests and the media were conspicuously absent. They were only clinging to a unique connection. In contrast to their hectic lifestyles, their wedding was intimate and beautiful. However, their distance remained unchanged after they tied the knot. Even as Richard sought solace in solitude, Cindy's schedule continued to fill up. In her efforts to become the lady he desired, she strayed from her own self. The gap between them widened over time, not in terms of physical distance, but in terms of emotions and understanding. Their marriage was perfect from the start. No major conflicts or betrayals occurred. On the contrary, their connection was marked by a serene tranquility. Because they were now living together more like roommates than lovers, they no longer shared anything more than a home. Their once strong connection began to fade as their goals and emotions became increasingly discordant. They decided to break up between the years of 1993 and 1995. When they broke up, there were no fighting or nasty words spoken. It was kind and composed. Many wondered why the renowned and attractive couple couldn't just stay together. According to Richard, the answer was simple: time. His hope was that love might provide stability to a woman whose identity she was still developing. It was unreasonable to anticipate that. Both of them were correct. They were definitely not prepared for a long-term love relationship. One continued to soar into the air as she pursued her passions and discovered her true identity. Seeking tranquility and a more leisurely pace, the other had arrived at the seaside. Even though they loved one another, their hearts were racing at separate rates. This marriage ended in divorce, which impacted Richard Gere's life. Despite the pain, the lesson had to be taken to heart. Love, he realized, is much more than simply finding the one. Becoming someone who can love completely and profoundly when the time is right is also important. At this turning point in his life, he would leave the bustle behind and embrace a more sedate, contemplative phase. What did Richard Gere do to recover from this heartbreaking breakup and discover a love that was more concerned with subtle power and enduring connection than with fame and fortune? The subsequent years, a time of contemplation, parenting, and an unrecognized love tale, hold the key. Richard Gere took his time following his divorce from Cindy Crawford, avoiding the limelight and getting into another public relationship. Quietly, he retreated and took a new path. Introspectively, he studied Buddhism and meditation. Beyond his search for tranquility, he was also engaged in an unprecedented quest for self-discovery. In a world that might be both chaotic and overwhelming, Gere sought solace. This shift affected everything. His hectic existence came to a halt, and he redirected his energy towards his priorities, living in the now, expanding his knowledge of spirituality, and lending a hand to those in need. Carrie Lowell, an actress Richard met at this time, was well known for her role as a Bond girl, but had since departed the hustle and bustle of Hollywood. She kept her cool, was steady, and unassuming. When Richard was with Carrie, he felt secure, like never before. In the year 2000, they became a family after moving in together and having a boy they called Homer James Jigme. At the age of 51, Richard became a parent, which further altered his aspirations. This was a whole novel form of duty. Their marriage had nothing to do with fame or the media. It was peaceful and sedate, in stark contrast to Richard's wild youth. Richard read, tended to his garden, and meticulously selected film roles after they relocated to a sprawling house in Pound Ridge, New York. Carrie put in a lot of time and effort to create a calm home life for their kid. They gave off the impression of being a contented couple. However, there are instances when what appears tranquil from the outside is actually anything but. Carrie needed to be social and have fun, whereas Richard's religion deepened via extended meditation retreats and solitude. They began to have different goals and requirements. The tension between them increased, despite the fact that they weren't physically arguing. They began to appear in public less frequently as a pair. On occasion, a single attendee might turn up to a gathering. Their objectives had shifted. Their once-joined trip gradually became two separate trajectories that intersected less and less. Carrie openly requested a divorce in 2012 after being together for 18 years and married for 11 years. Although irreconcilable differences was cited as the cause, many closest to them were aware that there was more to the story. Though they shared a home, Carrie never felt connected to Richard's inner existence. There was no spark between her and the man within. Richard mistook the quiet for a sign of harmony, but in reality, it indicated an impenetrable chasm. Tough financial concerns, rather than arguments based on feelings, caused the breakup to stretch 3 years. Divorcing Richard was challenging because of his tens of millions of dollars worth of properties across the world. Still, they choose to split custody of their son, Homer, who shares his father's reserved nature and sensitivity. In public, there was not a single incident or slur. Two individuals softly acknowledging that they had grown apart from one another. Separation from a relationship is simply one aspect of Richard Gere's life at the moment. It exemplifies how challenging it is to meet the demands of both personal development and one's relationships. Love can't prevent individuals from developing at various rates. Having a steady routine could make you feel like you're hiding a deeper need for solitude. The years put Richard's patience and comprehension to the test. While his spiritual trip improved his mood, it also highlighted the importance of maintaining emotional distance. It taught Carrie that if she wants to experience life to the fullest, she must make connections with other people. They were forthright and discovered the comfort and security of being silent. They have a triumphant tale to tell. Richard Gere has been mostly invisible since the breakup. He stopped doing interviews and red carpet appearances. He was said to have chosen to live a solitary life as a parent and meditator. When Richard Gere finally found someone who could relate to the deep wounds inflicted by life and the value of a safe space to vent, what happened? Unlike the other connections, this one was not based on feelings, but on mending as a team. There seemed to be room in that relationship for a different sort of love. Following the amicable dissolution of his marriage to Carrie Lowell, Richard Gere further distanced himself from the spotlight. Neither was he seeking a new romantic partner or ready to return to the limelight. He shifted his attention to mending and finding calm in the present moment. At this period, he had an unexpected and subtle meeting with Padma Lakshmi. In her day, Padma was a TV personality, model, and novelist. It would appear that her life was just as hectic and full of activities as any renowned person's. Nevertheless, she veiled her wounds and stories of loss from view. Rebuilding her life after breaking up a long-term relationship was her newfound focus. Gere and Padma were able to communicate with one another without resorting to dramatic gestures or forceful language. When two individuals got one other, it was in the little quiet times. Unlike the dramatic romances that make headlines, their time together was cold and distant. I wasn't trying to cause trouble or make everyone envious. A friendship built on mutual understanding and respect, rather than pyrotechnics, it was peaceful and intimate. They relaxed into one another's company, had unforgettable meals, and relished the opportunity to be authentic without pretense or expectations. It was an opportunity for them to be themselves. Meeting in this way happens quite seldom. Nobody gets all worked up about that type of love. It flourishes in peaceful moments, when mutual understanding is cultivated through shared challenges. Passion had no place in Gere and Padma's relationship. Two individuals, each with their own scars, decided to walk side by side, if only temporarily. Life, though, moves at its own pace. A life of tranquility, meditation, and calm was what Richard sought. Padma particularly enjoyed the electrifying nature of television and live public events. Despite a brief encounter, they continued on separate routes. They parted ways in a nice manner instead of resisting the need. Their breakup was smooth and painless. A brief chapter came to a courteous and peaceful close. When their paths in life diverge, they were both aware that love alone can't always hold a couple together. They stayed friends and provided each other with encouragement and wisdom. Richard was profoundly affected by their brief romance. It showed him that love may be kind and restorative at times, as opposed to ferocious and destructive. The most important connections, not the longest ones, are what matter most, as it proved. A connection based on peace and acceptance, rather than performance or healing scars, became clear to him as a result. What takes place when love arrives subtly, without drama or demand, and gives healing rather than strife. Alejandra Silva became a part of Richard Gere's life at this point. She patiently waited for him to be ready, a love he had never experienced before. Quietly getting ready for anything serious was a first for Richard Gere. For years he had been seeking, failing, and eventually succeeding. Alejandra Silva entered his life in the year 2014 at a time when he was open to new experiences and emotions. When compared to the renowned ladies in his past, Alejandra stood apart. Neither stardom nor the spotlight were her goals. Rather, she exhibited composure, strength, and unwavering dedication to social justice issues. She was a Spanish activist who, after going through her own divorce, established a charity to aid the homeless. Improving people's lives was something she did out of real compassion, not for attention or applause. To get a feel for what it's like to be homeless, she even set up camp on the streets. Volunteering like this wasn't for show. It came from the heart. Both had met previously, but it wasn't until they were prepared that they could see each other clearly. It had nothing to do with sexual attraction or resentment, but rather a common goal for the future. They took their time and courted one another carefully. Rather of attempting showy movements, Richard was regular, composed music, and wrote letters by hand. In their subtle ways, they said, "I'm here, and I'm ready to stay if you want. Be careful, Alejandra." Because of their age gap and shared emotional wounds, she could relate to the difficulties he faced due to his celebrity. However, her heart began to open up under Richard's constant presence. Their love didn't start with a spark. Rather, it blossomed under the constant embrace of their common principles: compassion, fairness, and purposeful endeavors. They tied the knot in a modest Buddhist ceremony in New York City in April of 2018, a reflection of the spiritual link between them. Alejandra was captivated by the compassion and mindfulness teachings of Buddhism, which led her to choose it independently. Their vow to live a life of mutual support, understanding, and presence was reflected by the rite. They made their home on a property in Pound Ridge, New York, which Richard had previously occupied with Carrie Lowell. However, this time they graciously welcomed visitors and relatives into their house. Their first kid, a son named Alexander, was born in 1900, and they received a second child in 2000. Family walks, meditation sessions, and peaceful playtimes are basic pleasures that they treasure, yet they disclose few public details. Richard frequently remarks that Alejandra is the strongest, most courageous, most intelligent woman he has ever met. Every day he makes her coffee, composes music for her, and cradles their sleeping children to convey how much he loves them. He has discovered a love that only requires his presence, not perfection. When compared to his previous relationships, theirs is very different. The flame is constant and heats without burning. While their hearts remain one, they respect one another's unique qualities, such as Alejandra's activism and Richard's introversion. The purpose of this love is not to mend broken hearts or fill voids. The story is around two whole people who walk hand in hand, honoring the paths that each takes. They don't hold on tightly or try to keep each other there. Instead, they glide ahead in harmony. Richard had to learn a lot of harsh lessons before he could find love. Love may sneak up on you in the most unexpected ways, as his story demonstrates. Patience, presence, and a common goal, rather than pressure or show, are the building blocks of a great relationship. Richard and Alejandra created a life worth living, not for fame or fortune, but for their loved ones, their principles, and the harmony they achieved. With his new love, he entered a life devoid of the spotlight of Hollywood, a life of quiet joy, purpose, and simplicity. On a daily basis, how does this new chapter appear? How can a man who was once a movie star now discover significance in the little things in life? Living a life away from the limelight holds the key. The concept of love has evolved considerably in Richard Gere's mind throughout the years. Big gestures and outcome control are things of the past. If you love someone, he says, you should stand by their side as they celebrate their uniqueness. It is being there for each other without attempting to dominate or alter each other in any way. This kind of love is truthful, sympathetic, and patient. These days, Richard prefers to keep to basic routines, waking up with Alejandra to make coffee, entertaining his kids with piano music in the evening, and spending time in the garden during the day. He is unfollowed by cameras. He and his family are living their lives to the fullest. In the background, he and Alejandra fight for the rights of the oppressed and the destitute. Their belief is that genuine change comes from doing good deeds, not from seeking applause. Hence, they avoid recognition. We learn from his story that love isn't always a grand epic. Two individuals who value and care for one another often find themselves sharing the mundane routines of life. We find a love that lasts when we let go of our expectations and be ourselves. I appreciate you taking the time to see Richard Gere find love. Please subscribe, like, and share this tale if you found it enjoyable. If you want to see more incredible stories, click the video that will appear next.